Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About It. Today's guest is Amarillo native Jeni Stennis. She is the writer and creator of The Blind, and we're going to dive into that production and the fact that they're taking that on a road. But, you know, Jeni, in all the conversations that we've had about The Blind, we haven't really talked a whole lot about you growing up here in Amarillo and I think it's important to set the table on you and what you've been doing and growing up here in Amarillo.
Okay, well, I grew up here in Amarillo. But yeah, that is something important for people to know, even seeing the show, because Jeni Deneke, Brian's older brother, and I were classmates in elementary school and also at Crockett. And we also had a few classes at Amarillo High School as well before I transferred out of the school. So yeah, I grew up here. My dad was from Amarillo and grew up here, and my parents moved back here from Houston when I was like 4 years old. Yeah. So I had 4 younger sisters. We were really involved in First Baptist Church, and then when I was in middle school, my family started going to Trinity Fellowship. So there are a wide range of experiences faith-wise, and then my dad was an optometrist here. My mom, they both had law degrees. My mom practiced for a little while, then became a teacher and a counselor. My parents are wonderful people, and I have a lot of great memories growing up here. But a very different background than Jason, and that juxtaposition is really key in the show.
So, in growing up here in Amarillo, you went on. You were obviously theater was something that you loved. That was something that motivated you kind of through life. Yes,
I was privileged to be among those who grew up with Linda Hughes at Amarillo College Children's Theater at the time. She was such a mentor to so many of us. At the time, Amarillo Little Theater didn't have a children's program, but I happened to audition for a show that Alan Shankles was doing when I was 9 years old in his second season at ALT.
Oh, my goodness.
That involved children. It was Peter Pan. It was his first time doing Peter Pan. There have been, I think, 3 Peter Pans there in the span of his years there. And so I got to play an Indian and Jane. At the very end, I got to actually fly. Sherman Bass was Peter Pan in that production. And so I have some roots at ALT that are back in my childhood as well.
It's funny you mentioned Sherman Bass. I just talked to him today. I adore him. He is wonderful and still continues to be such an impact for theater, for film here in our area. He's doing wonderful things. Okay, so growing up here in Amarillo, and a lot of people don't know this, you were actually in the ministry for a while too, right?
Yeah, I was involved in ministry for the first 10 years or so of my adult life, not here in Amarillo, but in Nashville, and then in Los Angeles in an international organization. So but that, kept us rooted in Amarillo because we raised all of our support for being in the ministry from people here in our hometown. Yeah. So for years, we would reconnect with people in Amarillo every summer and, meet with our partners. And a lot of roots still here in Amarillo.
So
in that regard.
Having grown up with Jason, and I think that's where we kind of want to tie this back in together, what was it as you're kind of going through life and doing a couple of different jobs, meanwhile being a mom, being all of these things, what was it that made you want to sit down and say, I want to dive back into something that was so instrumental in growing up, knowing Jason and knowing about Brian?
Well, this is actually comes up in the show because it's a very meta show. And the line that the character based on me, Jenny, that played by Heather Manderson, she actually mentions that she had the idea for this play when she first saw the film Bomb City come out in 2018. Right. And of course that was also produced by local people, and it told the actual story of the hit and run murder and the tragedy of Brian's death. But when I saw that play, and like I do as a storyteller and as someone who's always, storytelling and coaching people has kind of been a through line in my life, even starting back in the ministry, and then with theater and as a parent. And I tend to watch stories and plays and films on so many different levels, and I'm actively watching it through the eyes of the different types of people who might be consuming this story, and trying to think through what impact those stories make on different kinds of people. And I really saw an opportunity after seeing the film to take this approach this story from a new angle in a way that would really bring the wider community and people who weren't actual figures in the story, but actually very much contribute to a culture that permits or promotes or discourages things like this from happening. Yeah. And that's the bystander, that's the wider community. And so I wanted to see how I could use what I know about storytelling strategy, about story psychology, about nonviolent communication, and lead people through an experience of this story in a way that brings the story home to their personal lives in a deeper way. So that's what I was attempting to do, and that's what we've been doing.
Well, let's go deeper into your experience in that. To go back to 1997, when all of this tragedy happened in the parking lot just off of Western, pretty close to I-40, right across the street from the IHOP that is still there to this day. Take me back to your experience in again, knowing Brian and knowing Jason.
Yeah. That comes up in the play as well, so I'm going to try to avoid quoting my own lines, but...
I think it's okay if you quote.
Is that okay?
Yeah, it's
right.
okay if you quote.
No spoilers,
yeah.
But yeah, I'll go ahead and say it. Like, I was living in Nashville at the time. It was something that I heard about from my mom, from a phone call, first of all. And then eventually, as things came out over the news, I watched all of those programs, the Dateline show, I watched the talk shows, and everything that happened in succession from that time throughout the time of the trial. That story made international headlines because it was so resonant with people who were concerned about hate crime, who, this is precursory to like our obsession with true crime, nowadays, but it's still like it really shocked people, and it really drew a lot of curiosity, and it really made an impact on the punk community internationally because this is a very familiar story, and a lot of people have experienced similar close calls with death because of the threats that have been in their lives. A lot of people, not just in the punk community, but in all kinds of other segments of our population, when people face marginalization because of their differences or their perceived differences. That's all I can tell you about my own experience of it. That's actually key to the way I end up telling this story, because it didn't really affect me. It was very sad, but it was about a family I didn't know. It was about a kid I remembered from school and that I really liked and had an affinity for. Like, I just really appreciated him as a person, but we were never friends. So it wasn't something I had to really process that deeply for myself. And I think that's part of the problem. And the opportunity that I saw in retelling this story, using me as an example, using me and my background as kind of a representative character of a community that doesn't have to get involved, really. We get the privilege of sitting back and being shocked and like saying, oh, how horrible, and then have, expressing our opinions about what people should have done differently. Yeah. But that is such a relatively privileged position to be in. And then
not productive.
Not productive, exactly. Yeah. And then it never changes us, and it never changes the culture, and it never goes a step further to do anything else that would be more preventative. It's a key moment in the show as well, I think. We don't mention names of anyone other than Brian, and maybe, as Jason and Jeni are exchanging their memories of growing up here, they do mention the name of a middle school teacher who's like kind of our sole good example between the memories that they're exchanging. But other than that, no one is named. the kid that was also involved in the incident, his name isn't used. It's because we really don't want to throw the attention too far away from being close to home. Yeah. And so that's kind of key. Like Gabe Sherman, who plays Jason, at one point says, mentions this is a kid, who's years away from a fully developed prefrontal cortex. And then Heather's character, Jeni, mentions later on, about how all of the messages that he hears growing up, what are the things that he's witnessed and seen and learned from his community that in a moment like that can help him suddenly make a rash decision and feel justified in doing something unthinkable. Yeah. And that's, as much as we get into that, because we really want to keep it very individual and personal for each audience member.
Well, it's unimaginable for anybody to think, I'm going to go through this. You were talking about kind of taking it a step further. I think you've done that here in the area in those talkbacks. Talk to me about how cathartic and healing that has been for you as somebody who wrote this, who put so much into it, and then after the production to be able to hear the talkback, where you open it up for the audience to ask questions and to kind of process it together as a collective group.
Yeah, we've heard that word cathartic a number of times, and we've heard the word closure. We've had a really great response, and that's really the valuable thing that we've been able to do with this, not just here in Amarillo, but the few times that we've had so far to take it outside of Amarillo, where it's not the community where this happened. It really resonates with people. By and large, people choose to stay afterwards. We've got, a 45-minute festival-length version of the show right now in the course of its development, and that just pairs really well with a brief intermission, and then this time that we can gather back together. If people need to leave, that's fine, but the majority of our audience members have been staying, and they'll contribute, and they'll express their own, the impact that the show is making on them, like in the moment. They'll talk about their own, sometimes, their own experiences of being on either side of these kinds of incidents, and even in the third position of being a witness, being a bystander, not being involved, and yet realizing, wait a second, I was actually involved to the extent that I've seen things happen and I didn't intervene, or I realized that someone needs help and I don't think it pertains to me at all. I just go about my life and pat myself on the back because I'm a good person. And, that's not enough. We need to take better care of one another out of that position of your goodness. And so that's what it's been a really beautiful thing. I do have other plans for the show, but right now we're really enjoying getting to do this show as a part of a community conversation event and bring it full circle for everyone.
So right now it's 45 minutes, and of course there's a talkback, but you do have plans. There are plans, and we'll talk about that at some point, but you are going to take this a step further. Well, that's what it sounds like to me.
Well, very immediately we're going to London with the production.
Yes. Well, it's making waves here. Why not make waves across the ocean? Sure. You guys are heading over there, and I'm just so proud of you guys. And I know Heather and Gabe and I have a long history. We grew up at Boys Ranch together, and we're in theater together. And so,
that's right.
Yeah, so we were best friends. We did all the theater things together, and went to WT together. And so, to see Gabe in this moment, and when we interviewed the other day on Studio 4, it just is really. I know that they're touched. I think to see the emotion in interviewing Gabe and Heather about how personal this has become for them. And I think a big part of that is because of your involvement with the Deneke family. In that they have been, Brian's mother and father not only have been there from the very get-go, they're going with you. Talk about your relationship with them and how that has created this unique teamwork with the family and with the cast and with the crew and everything else that you guys are all now going to Europe.
Yeah, it's been amazing. It's just now barely coming up on a year since I was finally able to get a hold of Jason, 30 some odd years after ever, having any contact with him since childhood, and simply get to ask his permission, to write this play, pour my heart out to him and say, I want to base a character on your actual life and use your actual name. Can you trust me with that?
How did he respond to that?
Well, it's kind of crazy. Like, I had in mind the structure of what I wanted to do with this play, and the play is simply a meeting between these two people. So I kind of wanted to meet with Jason and then see what elements of truth I could add to the story. Like, the whole play is about the development of the play. So I wanted a meta process. I was like, if we're going to use this true story element of Brian's death and his tragedy, I want to use all these other true story elements too, if I can, in my life and his life, and let's see what happens here. So we actually weren't able to meet. He had to cancel, and the story of that cancellation actually ends up in the play, and the happenstance that this encounter that happens that night instead ends up in the play. What ended up happening was we finally were able to just email and text. I poured my heart out to him about what I wanted to do. And amazingly, he just put his belief, out there for the show, just the way that really I had and the way everyone has since. That's really kind of the way everything has unfolded. So he and his parents have been very supportive this whole year, this whole process. And now what's become really important over the course of the last year is his parents being able to show up and listen to everyone's responses. That has been so meaningful to them. And, I can't tell you how much, like, that has meant to us, even, to have them witnessing every performance and being there in the talk back. And so it was actually some relatives of theirs who kind of nudged me at a barbecue at Jason Deneke's house at Memorial Day weekend, when we were all there and gathered with a lot of the people who have been a part of this story from the beginning, who were there with Brian and Jason all these years ago. We've built a lot of relationships with these folks, and we have felt a lot of acceptance from them, a lot of support. And some relatives of the Denekes were there and kind of nudged me, and they're like, we're so excited that you guys are going to London in this next process of the show's development. But who would really also love to be there? And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I know Mike and Betty would. I know they would just love to see how people in London, all of these, it's going to really be an international audience that shows up for Camden Fringe. And then right there in Camden, that's the heart of punk history, since the 70s. So we really wanted, if it was feasible, we were like, we're going to make sure we get them there too. And so we, just in the matter of the last few weeks, started raising some funds to say, hey, crowdfunding didn't exist back when Brian died or when the trial, was underway. There's never really been a great tangible way for a community to show their support for this couple who have done so much to support kids over the years. And, would you offer what you can to support them coming out and having this chance of a lifetime to see the show there and see the audiences there?
And they answered the call. I mean, the people came out and they're going with you guys. Now, you just raised enough money.
Well, almost. We're almost there. We have just a little bit left.
Okay.
But we raised enough to feel confident about it. Yeah. So we've got their flight tickets. They're actually flying out with Gabe and I on that flight. And then I'll be there to be able to kind of make sure that I can show them the ropes and how to get around. And we're helping them with all the plans. And, they're going. And we're leaving really soon here.
Okay, so take me back to the reading. So you finish. I know that you really cast Gabe and Heather, I think before the play was even complete, right?
Yes, before I had written the play, before I had gotten a hold of Jason, I just put a lot of things in motion that I kept saying to people, hey, if Jason says we're not doing this, we'll shut it down. Yeah. But just in case, we don't have a lot of time, so we're going to go ahead and put things into play.
Okay, so you get the play written. I think, if I remember right, there was a reading, I guess at ALT, where you get everybody, and the Denekes came to the reading. Yes. How nervous were you? Because you've just put all of this down on paper. You've committed a lot of time and poured your heart and soul into this, and then to have someone in the audience so important as the Denekes to listen to it for the first time. Take me back there.
Yes, I was a little nervous. Fortunately, I'd written the show just in the week leading up to that reading. We had, less than a week had been Jason saying, okay, yes, I trust you. Let's see what you can do with it. I think this is a great idea. It's really different. Let's do it. So I wrote the first draft in the next 3 days so that Heather and Gabe and I could do a Zoom call and read through it. Then we showed up, the next Sunday before about 30 to 40 people that we'd invited to this reading. Fortunately, I had gone ahead and just hurriedly sent Jason a copy, sent his parents a copy, and said, please, if you have the time, just read this. I framed it all, fortunately, so that they understood this is a process. Yeah. We can change anything. We want to understand what you're comfortable with. We want to understand what might go too far or the details I get wrong. We want your feedback through the whole process, and this is just the beginning of it. So because I had framed it as a very experimental thing, I felt a little bit more reassurance. And I just knew that there would be some wonderfully supportive, compassionate people that showed up as well. And I just knew the energy altogether that we were doing something that they could get behind. I wanted it to be something they could get, and they did. They were extremely supportive right from the beginning. I don't remember if I had announced that they were there. I'm pretty sure I did not tell people. Oh, by the way, before we get this going, Mike and Betty Deneke are sitting right there next to you, because I did not want that to be a distraction while they heard the show. Oh. However, when we had a talk back time after we read it, I did go ahead and introduce them, because I also wanted to make sure that no one misspoke in a way that they, might have, otherwise filtered a little bit, knowing that some of the family was right there.
So Heather and Gabe, they don't know they're in the room, right?
They didn't know until, no, I guess not.
Well, because I'm sure that was probably pretty emotional once they finished that, to realize that they were in the room for that.
Yes. What was emotional was that after everyone had given all this beautiful feedback, and we were about to wrap up, Mike Deneke did raise his hand and stand up, and he's a very soft-spoken person, but he said just a few simple things to the effect of, I really think that this could help people understand and change a lot of people's perspectives on kids and how we treat people. And at that point, I know Heather retells this part, but for her, we were all, if we hadn't already been emotional, we were emotional at that point. So that was very, very validating.
Now that when you first came up with this idea, and would you ever have imagined that you're taking the show on the road and going to London now, sharing it with an international audience?
Gosh, I wish I could remember now. I think I was just too busy and focused with everything in front of me. I didn't, I was just focused on, hey, let's do this for Fort Worth Fringe. Mm-hmm. That gives me a goal and a deadline, and so I know it'll happen, because I just don't have the luxury to just sit and write plays, right, or do something like this in my spare time. But it gave us a goal or something to focus on. I would really, once we realized this is working, this is exactly what I was aiming for, which is an opportunity to use storytelling to move people to a place of deeper empathy, of effective empathy, and that relates to so many, and that gets people talking about issues that, especially recently, are highly polarizing, and that we rarely can actually sit around and with our defenses lowered enough to get to the heart and the truth of what we really have in common and what really matters. Yeah. And we don't have those opportunities anymore. And so once we saw that this is working to that end, then the plan started to kind of unfold a little bit more about getting it out there to different communities, but also hopefully in the future developing a full-length version that we can produce at maybe a higher level to hopefully bring a lot of positive attention and resources back to the Panhandle. That's what we'd ultimately like to see happen in the next few years.
Well, keep us up to date, because
Sure.
I want to see this on where this goes. I know it's going to London now. And will more people here get a chance to see it after you guys are done with London? Do you think there are going to be a couple of other opportunities for Amarillo audiences to?
Possibly, every time, every chance that we've had to do it now, which has really been 3 public performances that have been staged here in Amarillo, I do the best I can with the time I have to reach out and invite people and encourage people to come. And most people who do see it say, oh my goodness, if I had known it was this,
Yeah.
So it's really difficult for people to understand until they do see it, what we're doing. I hope we do have the opportunity. I know we're going to go back to Dallas-Fort Worth. It sounds like we're going to go to Kansas City. There's Albuquerque and Santa Fe. But actually, a little closer to home, we're in a conversation with Boys Ranch, and there have been a lot of opportunities to do this for staff there, or for high school students in different capacities at Boys Ranch and other places. So we'll see what happens. Yeah. And if we do, come on out. Yeah.
All right. I would love to.
Don't miss the next time.
Yeah, especially if it's at a Boys Ranch. That would be a lot for me to be out there, especially to see Gabe back on a stage out there would be very cathartic for me.
Oh, yeah.
Jeni, where can people go? Because I know that you're still raising money for this. We're not quite there. Where can people go, first off, to help, and then to learn more about what The Blind is all about?
Okay. Well, the best way to find us and kind of, keep in touch with what's going on is to go to Instagram, and our handle there is at theblind.play. Okay. That's our Instagram page, and it has a link in our bio that takes you directly to our current campaign, which is the funding for The Blind. We've actually just had a wonderful matching grant offered to us for $7,500. That way, everything that, every person who's able to donate towards this production, your money will go a lot longer, a lot farther toward helping us. And we are only $3,000 or $4,000 away from being able to cover these production expenses for these 6 performances in London.
Oh, that's great.
Above and beyond, then that will give us some funds toward our future development. Okay. Check out that campaign. We're looking for literally 806 people for the 806 area who can back The Blind at a minimum amount of $10. So no matter, even this donor at $7,500, their name is going to be alongside of all of our other names. Yeah. Nobody knows who's given what. We're, because of the heart of this play, we're just standing shoulder to shoulder and supporting, backing The Blind with whatever's a meaningful gift for you. And then also, we do still have this GoFundMe going on for Mike and Betty Deneke. So if that really resonates with you and you want to help them, get those last few $100s so that they can, have a nice visit in London in a few weeks, then please find that campaign as well on our Instagram page.
Well, thank you for being so willing to share from your perspective. And we've had you on Studio 4. We've done a story with you guys, and we want to continue to follow this to the end. So we appreciate you sharing your story, and just thank you for your time.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
You bet. Now, if you have a story that you want more people to know about, let's talk about it. You can email me at ajustus@kamr.com.